Pique the Pickens! Pique the Pickens! Pique the Pickens!
Pittsburgh Steelers fans, what is going on? This is Jeff Hartman of the Steel Curtain Network, which is a part of Fans First Sports Network. Joining me as always on this podcast, Dave Schofield and Bryan Davis. What's up, Dave? How's it going?
It's going all right. Nice to be back with you guys.
Yeah, that's right. He's back from vacation. Everyone drank.
I didn't say it.
Brian,
I didn't say it.
So glad to be here, fellas, again with two of my best buddies. And, you know, it was 70-some degrees here in the state that we reside in, and I'm starting to feel it. I'm feeling the magic.
A little spring fever?
Yeah, I've got it.
Good. Yeah, it's changing of the seasons is always fun, especially when you're getting warmer. We have a lot of stuff to discuss today. We have, we were just getting ready to talk about the Steelers free agent purgatory, the people in limbo, those that have not signed yet, and then news happens earlier Thursday. It hasn't been official yet, but Terrell Edmunds takes to social media, both his Instagram feed as well as Twitter, essentially saying, hey, Pittsburgh, thank you. Coaching staff, organization, teammates, fans, all of them. I appreciate it. And then our good friend Jerry Dulac of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, he comes out and says, sources say Terrell Edmunds is leaving. Wow, Jerry, thank you for the insider information. But when you heard that, Dave, what were your thoughts?
This has me following along with most of Steelers Nation and be like, oh no, what are we going to do? What's happening at the safety? The Steelers have 2 free safeties and no strong safety. What's going to happen? You know, and that's what happened with the Steelers when they, believe it or not, with some Steelers fans, when they lost Robert Spillane. Well, now what are they going to do at linebacker? Well, you know what? The Steelers turned around. They had an answer. I'm hoping they have another one. That's all I can say now. We are in that moment now where there's been no official announcement that Terrell Edmunds signed somewhere, but other than the fact that he informed the Steelers he was signing somewhere else. Maybe the Steelers convince him not to. Maybe they don't, and they have to go in another direction. But I would really like to see something more happen there sooner than later, so we don't have to worry about the Steelers going into the draft with -1 starter like we thought they were going to do last year when they signed Edmunds right before the draft started.
What about you, Brian? What was your kind of knee-jerk reaction when you saw the news?
I go back to one of my favorite movies from 1999. It's called American Pie. And I think about the fact when Finch had the one of his friends, I cannot remember her name in the movie, but to go around and say that he was just fantastic romantically and start that rumor so he would start to get prom dates. So maybe that's Terrell Edmunds' way of getting this going. Maybe there is no team to sign with. Maybe it's just one of those promotional deals that he's doing for himself. I mean, you never know.
What we know about Terrell Edmunds, and he's been with the Steelers for 5 seasons. Do you really think he's that kind of guy?
No, but it gave me an American Pie reference.
Ah, there you go. Well, hey, I could give you a lot better American Pie references, but still, yeah, I just don't think Edmunds is that kind of guy. I think that he's very genuine. I think he wanted to maybe get in front of the news. I wouldn't be shocked if the news hits tomorrow, Friday, and you find out that he signed with maybe the Chicago Bears, where his brother Tremaine went. Maybe he signs with Lord knows which team. I wouldn't be shocked if he signs with the Bengals. The Bengals need safety help, and he might say they might offer him a more lucrative contract. The Steelers have lowballed him a whole bunch, and he's looking for things elsewhere. Now, let me ask you this question quick. We'll go with Dave first. How do you think the Steelers move forward here? You have to think that Edmunds was at least in their plans. He wasn't their priority, or they wouldn't have signed Damontae KZ first. But if he was in their plans and now he's no longer going to be a part of that, what is step one for the Steelers? Do they look at free agents, or do they just address it in the draft, Dave? What do you think?
Well, first of all, I'm sorry. I'm still trying to recover. I kind of threw up in my mouth a couple times there when you said about signing with the Bengals.
Mike Hilton did it. And they were interested last year, too. The Bengals were in on him last year, and he chose to come back to Pittsburgh.
Yeah. But I would not hold off for the draft to think that you're going to draft a starting strong safety. I know, yes, I love Damontae KZ. Who doesn't love Minkah Fitzpatrick? If you're a Steelers fan and you don't like Minkah Fitzpatrick, You're a very rare breed because I haven't met one yet. Who knows? Maybe they'll come out of the woodworks here in the live chat tonight. I don't know, but to me, you don't have the right type of player to fill out your roster there. And the Steelers don't have that answer. And I don't see them as a team that goes into the draft because I don't think you're going to find that answer at 17. I don't think it's worthy of that answer at 17. You've got to have the right player, and I don't think that's there. Therefore, to me, anything lower than that isn't even at 17. Do you really want to have to count on that person to have to start day one? Because if they're not ready, you don't want to have to do that. So I think they have to do something in free agency.
Brian, do you agree or disagree with Dave's sentiment?
I think they're going to do a little bit of both, actually, and that's not me just hedging my bets. I can see them bringing somebody else in. I haven't even looked at who is out there as far as
I'm looking right now
as safeties and the difference between strong safeties and free safeties. I haven't taken a look at it. I know the one guy that's coming out in the draft that it seems like the safety that everybody's talking about is Brian Branch, and he's a guy that you could possibly get at 32. He might be a mid-20s guy. You never know exactly what they're looking at there. All I know is that this team is continually reinvent themselves, and they continually restock. So I have no problem with this. I mean, I would have loved to have kept Terrell Edmunds. He was one of my favorite players just because of the way he was not revered over the years. And they finally, the last year and a half, people started to realize that, all right, he's a lot better than we think he is. He's been a great contributor. And that goes back to, this is probably the last time I'm going to go ahead and say it because he's probably not going to be on the team anymore. But again, if he was a second round draft pick, he would probably be one of everybody's favorite players.
Okay, before I get into my thoughts on this, which is it's something I talk about a lot on Friday's Let's Ride podcast, where I have some serious concerns about the defense, and this was even before Terrell Edmunds said he was leaving. I'm looking at the list of players here that are available. A lot of them are aging veterans. You're talking about 30, 31 years old. Honestly, man, I'm looking at here's who their answer is probably 29-year-old safety Carl Joseph. They're probably going to sign Carl Joseph and say, there's their guy. He's back, and hope for the best. I mean, Tony Jefferson is a name I recognize. Ronnie Harrison is on the list. Daniel Sorensen, Deron Harmon, Keanu Neal is on the list, although I heard he visited with the Eagles, I think, recently. Rodney McLeod, Kareem Jackson. This is from Sport Rack, and I did say that they had to be
Spot Rack.
Spot Rack, Sport Rack, whatever. Who else? Marcus Allen's available. Watch out. Devin McCourty, I think he retired. Or is that his brother? I don't know. Deron Harmon, I might have said his name. So yeah, not much. But here's the thing about Terrell Edmunds, and this is an unpopular opinion. This might be a case, in my opinion, where we overvalue our own players, and I say our players as if we own them. We are the fans. But I think sometimes Steeler fans overvalue their own free agents. So let me throw this out here. And I talked with Jeremy Betts about this on Friday's show. What are the two metrics that we gauge safeties on in the NFL? What would be one? Brian, give me one.
Tackles.
Okay, so like a hard-hitting nature, good tackler. That would be one. Dave, what would be the other one?
It's got to be the interceptions. That's what they do.
Splash plays, right?
Yeah.
You want to make splash. Terrell Edmunds does not have splash plays. Doesn't make them. Never. You can say what you want about, well, they don't require him to do that, blah, blah, blah. The dude can't catch. We know this. Okay? Is he known as like this great tackler, hard hitter?
No.
So when I think about these guys, I think about past players. So I think about the hard hitter. I think Bob Sanders. Bob Sanders was like a missile. Okay? I think about the big splash play. Thinking like Ed Reed, right? I mean, all over the field. And then you think about, is there anyone that can combine both? Well, yeah, Troy Polamalu. Those are very rare. Those are very, very rare. Tell me what Terrell Edmunds does so great that we should be like, wow, I can't believe we're losing this guy. And if we only need him as a tackler, I believe they could probably find that. Don't you think so? Dave, what do you think? What are your thoughts?
Well, I could answer your question with another question.
Sure.
What player is going to give you more production than that at that price?
Oh, I'm not saying
Yeah.
that the Steelers should not overpay for Terrell Edmunds.
Yeah.
What they paid for him is honestly market value. If he gets a better deal, good luck, man. You deserve it. But for what the Steelers got from him from a production standpoint, they got unbelievable reliability and durability. That's important. But from a production standpoint on the field, sometimes I think we overvalue that. Brian or Dave, were you done?
Sorry, I was just answering, but it's a possibility. See, this is also why I liked a player like Kyle Hamilton last year. That's why, you don't fall in love with him too much because now he's wearing purple, but because he wasn't going to get to the Steelers where they were picking. So, and I knew that. So it's just, I don't know what's really out there to do what Edmunds can do for the Steelers is that's the thing. So you say, do we overvalue them? Yes, but you also have to value the lack of a learning curve and familiarity is one thing that is valuable. So for example, the Steelers, swap out Patrick Peterson for Cam Sutton. Let's look at it just at 2023 because, Sutton should have more of a career left than Peterson. That's kind of obvious. But just for 2023, you would say, oh, wow, well, they got Peterson for less of a cap hit than Sutton. And you have that experience, and it might not be much. But is he a guy that's going to come right in and be able to pick up stuff right away? Now, for Patrick Peterson, because of his resume, I would say yes. I don't know if you have a safety like that out there on the market that you think that can come in and be ready to just go and work and flow with Minkah Fitzpatrick. It might be, even if they sign someone else, DeMonte KZ and Minkah Fitzpatrick, both back there, they're not – I'm trying to figure out if there's a way that they make that work where that would be your two safeties, and it just doesn't seem – it's kind of like having two buck linebackers because even though they're both inside linebackers, they're not the same thing unless the Steelers are specifically scheming to do it that way. And I don't know that that's what the Steelers are set up to do. So to me, when it comes, you say, because the ultimate question that I was answering back was, do we overvalue, right?
Yep.
Is that, yeah, but that's because you're adding in other things, other intangibles like familiarity that do add value. So I understand why it's done. But if Terrell Edmunds was just a free agent coming in from another team, it wouldn't mean nearly as much as if he was someone, the fact that he's someone who's been with the Steelers for 5 seasons now.
Brian, what are your thoughts on that in terms of overvaluing someone like Terrell Edmunds?
We care about what we know. So we value the fact that this guy has come to work every single day in a hard hat. You feel like he's a lunch pail type of guy. You never have a problem with him, and we value the fact that he's been there and he has filled out that Robin role. And now we're hoping that a guy like KZ could be that Robin, but like Dave said earlier, they play the same position, Minkah and KZ. So it's really interesting to see. But yeah, when you lose a guy that's on your team, we did this last week. Some people right away said, no big deal, Spillane left. Then other people were mortified because what are you going to do? Didn't know that they had a plan, but you value the fact that the man's been here since 2019 and he's come up in key spots for you, even though you complain about him half the time because he couldn't do this and this and that. But when he's gone, we can't lose that.
Yeah, and it reminds me of Jim Wexell, who you can hear Jim every Wednesday at noon on our Steel Curtain Network with the Steel City Insider podcast. Make sure you check that out. His book, Palomalu, where he talked about, when Troy came into the league and he was paired up with the safety, it was Chris Hope. And then Chris Hope leaves. I believe he went to Tennessee. Am I right? I think he went to Tennessee after Pittsburgh. And they signed this Ryan Clark guy. To me, it's kind of when Ryan Clark was signed, I still remember seeing it on Steelers.com. Like, who the hell is this? Ryan Clark? I don't know who this guy is. He played for the Redskins. Are you kidding me? Like, what's this guy going to do? Hey, turned out to be okay. This is a situation where if everything that we've heard, and I'm talking about KT Smith, Jeffrey Benedict, the people that know more about football than I do, when they talked about how they just need someone that can almost be like that linebacker type role underneath, tackle, cover tight ends and running backs, and then you let KZ and Minka do their thing in the deep half. I feel like that's a little bit easier to find than the reverse. So we'll see. We shall see. But this is a great lead in to the topic of discussion today, which is a look at the Steelers residing in what we call free agent purgatory, the players that haven't been signed yet. So here's what I want to do. We're going to go through these offense first and then defense. And we're just going to kind of see, do you see them being signed anytime soon? Any of these being signed with the Steelers? Let's start on, actually, let's go to defense first, then we'll take a break since we were talking about Terrell Edmunds. It just seems natural. Tyson Alualu is the first one up. Dave, what do you think about old Tyson?
I think it's time for him to hang up the cleats.
Okay. What about you, Brian?
Ditto.
Yeah, I'm surprised it actually hasn't happened yet, to be honest with you. He definitely slowed down a lot last year, but I think we all three agree that retirement might be the next best step for Tyson Alualu. What about Marcus Allen? I brought him up as I listed off the safeties, although most people say he's more of a linebacker. Dave, what do you think about old Marcus Allen, special teams extraordinaire?
Yeah, the Steelers have him. They had him on the linebacker depth chart, but they didn't play him on defense. They didn't last year. They had previous to that when, looking more at that hybrid. That this is a guy, I can't believe they tendered him last year. Mm-hmm. Honestly, for that amount, I think they would have done much better than like what they did this year with someone like a James Pierre, who you don't give the tender to, but then you sign for about half that price. So I don't see him coming in for anything more than a veteran minimum later if the Steelers feel like they need to after the draft.
What about you, Brian?
I kind of feel like they're going to bring him back because it's familiarity. I know that's not going to be very popular because the live chat's going nuts with let him go. But, I feel that they love what he does in special teams. I feel like there's just a possibility that it's a fill out the roster kind of guy. And they could even do what they did last year, cut him and then decide, hey, we might bring him back. They've had those guys over the years that they've dropped and then held on to and brought back. I mean, I call it the Trey Edmunds Award because they kept on bringing that guy back. Or the LJ Fort, they did that a long time. Mm-hmm. And then they let LJ Fort go, and he actually found more of a career when he was gone from the Steelers because they kept bringing him back and letting him go. So I think Marcus Allen is kind of that guy. I don't think there's a huge market for a guy like Marcus Allen. So it's basically break glass in case of emergency. That's probably what they're going to do with this guy.
Yeah, I don't think anything happens with him until post-draft. I would be shocked if anything happens before the NFL draft. They could bring him back. I agree with Brian. I could see them maybe trying to say, hey, Edmunds is gone. Could somehow Marcus Allen, if he lost some weight, fill that role? I don't know. Who knows? If he's gone, he's gone. If he comes back, I really don't care. Let's go with Chris Wormley. Unfortunately, he's the one that tore an ACL in the I think it was it week 18 or was it week 17? I can't remember which week it was. It was one
17. It was against the Ravens. He was having one of his best games.
Yeah. Tears an ACL. Couldn't happen at a worse time. You're not looking at him being signed anytime soon. But Dave, you think he comes back to Pittsburgh when he's healthy?
No, I said this at the end of last year, and I'm going to stick with it. I could see the Steelers signing him even after the draft to like a minimum deal, knowing he's not going to be available for most of the season, just to kind of give him, kind of throw him a bone in order to have the training and the rehab and all the facilities. And then maybe he can come back partway through the year and see what he can do in order to then go get that next contract. If he doesn't get signed by anybody else and anywhere else, I could see the Steelers saying, hey, we will do this for you because you got injured last year if this is something you would like to do. But I wouldn't do anything above much above a minimum deal, and probably just for 1 year, do a veteran salary benefit contract and do something like that. Just, we saw what the Steelers did with Ryan Shazier after his injury and kept him around. They gave him his 5th-year option as a signing bonus so they could have his contract toll the next year in order to keep him around for another year for treatment and everything. So they take care of players like that. That's just something I could see happening. And then who knows, maybe down the stretch they have some other injuries at defensive line and Wormley's getting better and he can come back and help out. If not, he's just there.
Brian, what are your thoughts on Chris Wormley?
I didn't know if he was really in their plans this year. And if he was in their plans, I think they were going to be disappointed because he's another guy that you could have around just in case those young guys don't pan out. But you really need those young guys to pan out. Now, DeMarvin Leal, we expect some things from him. And I know he's not the inside guy like Alualu is. But if you look at the entire defensive line, there's some guys there. Montravius Adams is a guy that you can still bring back on the cheap. You have Isaiah Loudermilk that you would expect to possibly compete in that position. But you expect them to go ahead and pick up a defensive lineman in the draft, even rather early. I might be mispronouncing both of these names, but I've seen the possibility of Brian Brazee. And now, is it Maisie Smith from Michigan is getting a lot of play, and those are interior defensive linemen that. So I just don't really think there's a place.
I was going to say, after you had mentioned before how everyone had locked in Ika, was it Ika that you say at 32? Yeah, after the combine, he's just he's plummeted.
Didn't look good. We'll put it that way. I Loudermilk, although I would be fine if they do what Dave suggested. I do feel like Ryan Shazier's case was very unique. Yeah. And, holding a roster spot for a player, and even if it's an injured reserve spot for a player that might not even be healthy until the waning weeks of the season, I just don't see it happening. I think he remains a free agent for a while, but doesn't mean he won't come back. Let's go.
Well, I was just going to say, just to clarify, it's not because the Steelers need him. It's only if they wanted to do right by him. Because the first thing they could do right off the bat is put him on PUP. Then he doesn't even count towards the 90-man roster whenever you get to training camp. So it would, and you could do things in that manner.
All right, the last defensive player who is a free agent who has not signed is Carl Joseph. We mentioned him with the safeties. Was hurt in the preseason. And I think it was a lower leg injury. I don't know if it was a knee. We never really got that report. But Dave, what do you think about Carl Joseph? Tomlin loves him.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't have much of a contract last year. No reason to give much of a contract this year. If you want to bring him back for camp, just hit the reset button if you think that he's healthy enough to just do how you were doing things last year.
What about you, Brian?
With the state that they're in right now, yeah. I mean, that probably wouldn't hurt to bring him back at a low ball deal. And remember, and I even have some friends that are like, well, you can't pay that guy. He sucks. And I'm like, he doesn't suck. They value him because they know what they see in him and have in him, And it's just a situation where, remember, you've got to have those low end guys too. You've got to have some Baltics and Mediterraneans if you're going to still have Park Place and Boardwalk.
Well said. I think Carl Joseph, if he's healthy, and we won't know that unless he comes out and says something, and even then we might not even know it. I would think the Steelers would at least give him a shot. Like I said, Mike Tomlin has always liked this guy going back to his days at West Virginia University. There's a reason why he's been kept around for so long. So we'll see if Carl Joseph finds his way back onto the Steelers offseason roster. Dave, go ahead.
I was just going to say, just to clarify, last year he had a veteran salary benefit contract. And so therefore it was the league minimum and it counted a little bit less of the salary cap. That's what you would expect again for this year. Something that would barely put him in the top 51 if it did.
Yeah. So we'll see. All right, let's take a quick break so you can hear a word from our sponsors. When we come back, we're going to talk about the offensive players who are still on the open market, as well as some trivia. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, Steeler fans, welcome back. We're here talking about free agents, the free agent purgatory, the players that remain on the open market after the first wave of free agency has kind of concluded. There's still plenty of time for them to sign, but you do have to wonder if there's any traction on some of these players. Let's go to the offensive side. I'm really curious about this one. Why don't we start at the top? Old Mason Rudolph. Mace, the quarterback. I mean, Josh Dobbs, didn't he sign with Cleveland? And you're thinking if Dobbs is getting looks, I haven't heard a thing about Mason Rudolph. Let's switch it up on offense. Let's go to Brian first. Brian, what do you think about Mace?
It just depends what they're going to do with Mitch Trubisky. And there's some savings with getting rid of Mitch. And before, I think a couple of weeks ago, Dave was making a comment, and I kind of agreed with him. It's, that probably won't get rid of him because he does have that year left. But then you start to think, well, they just did this with Miles Jack. So it could be a possibility if they do want to save some money and they feel that they can go ahead and sign Mace at, a cheap contract, then you might be fine with him as your number 2 guy and bring in an undrafted guy or a rookie to be number 3 and hold that clipboard. But I don't see them both being here. So I think this hinges on what they decide to do with Mitch Trubisky.
Okay. What do you think they're going to do with Mitch Trubisky then?
I still think they're going to actually keep him. But so if that happens, then Mason's gone. So it's easy for me to say if he doesn't, he stays. But they're both not going to be here. You're not going to put that much money into your third QB.
Okay, Dave, what do you think about old Mace?
I don't think he wants to come back as a third QB option. He would have to take a very cheap deal. And to me, if they were going to do anything with Trubisky, they would have already done what they needed to do. They would have taken care of things in that manner. They've been pretty vocal. They weren't going to. And by the looks of it, the only way I thought them really moving on from Trubisky was if he asked to go. And it doesn't seem that he did. So to me, that's kind of been settled in my mind for a while because I thought they would have done something else with that sooner. So therefore, I believe it doesn't make sense for Mason Rudolph to come back. The only way I see it happening is if, oh my goodness, he's got nowhere to go. And he's just like, hey, I'll come be the third guy for you all again, rather than be out of the league. And I don't know if it'll get that bad.
I don't see Mason coming back. One of you said it that he doesn't want to be back probably unless it's an absolute. I have no other opportunities except for to be QB3 here. And I think someone will give him a shot. But let's get this super chat up here from Steel Dog 88. Gave us $5. Thank you very much. So what do you think if Steelers bring in someone from the USFL or the XFL? So we talk about free agents. That the XFL is going on right now. What do you all think are the odds that the Steelers could potentially, and we know Mike Tomlin watches it because he was on Ben Roethlisberger's podcast, that he watches all football, European League football. He watches this league in, I think it's Eastern Pennsylvania, like Delaware and Maryland almost, where it's tackle football with no pads and they just kill each other. He watches it. It's online. It's what he said. So, he's watching these guys. What do you think? Brian, do you think they bring in someone from the XFL?
I mean, that's a possibility, but that's for the end of the roster.
Yeah. Dave, what do you think?
Yeah, if they want to have 4 people in camp, I could see that if they didn't do anything else. They're going to have a rookie. If the Steelers, well, I was thinking quarterback specifically because in my mind, we have one Tommy Gunn that I'm thinking of, but it could be any positions at all. I mean, my goodness, when the Steelers added more AAF players than anybody when that finished. So I could see them filling off the bottom of the roster with any of these guys when the time comes.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. So let's continue down the free agent list. Let's go to fullback, everyone's favorite fullback, Derek Watt. What do y'all think of this? Brian, go ahead.
I'm in the minority here because I really loved what they did with him at the end of the season. And I think he was like 5 for 6 on was it 6 for 6 on 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1 when they just gave him the ball and that he was able to convert the chains. I could see them finding more of a home for him. I don't think they're going to give him, man, I don't think it's going to be a huge raise, but I don't have a complete problem with them bringing Derek Watt back. I think he's very good at what he does if they decide to use him.
Okay, Dave?
Well, the Steelers haven't done anything in the position. People still want to look at Derek Watt as a fullback, and he's not. He's a special teams player that fills in at the little time that the Steelers need a fullback. There's no reason to rush the gun here. It doesn't seem like people are knocking down his door. It would be nowhere close to what he signed for the last time. But the thing that I thought was interesting, because I don't know if you all read my jersey number article this morning where the new players, they had their jersey numbers. And I looked at what numbers they had before in the past and who had them now or why they couldn't use it. And Landon Roberts is number 50 for the Steelers now. And he had 2 previous numbers before landing in Pittsburgh. Those numbers were 52, which he was not going to get with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and 44. And Landon Roberts did not take number 44. I don't know if that means anything or not because the Steelers don't really have it out there as quote unquote available. Or maybe he just wanted to change. But I just thought that was interesting because that actually made me think about, oh yeah, Derek Watt. I wonder if the Steelers are going to do anything there. So I wouldn't be shocked at all to see him back, but it's not going to be anywhere close to like what it was before.
So I'm going to pull a Dave Schofield and a Shannon White here in one comment.
Oh, wow.
Shannon White would be, well, obviously you all didn't read my article that I wrote the other day. And Dave's would be that quirky little nuisance about a nuance, like, that one little nugget about a player that most people don't look. They did make a move at fullback, Dave. And it's Landon Roberts, who has played fullback in the National Football League when he was with the New England Patriots. They were out of fullbacks. He was their fullback. He said, I'll do whatever they need me to do. I'm like, oh, there it is. So when Dave said they haven't made a move at fullback, like, well, technically, they have a guy with NFL snaps
when they
and
drafted
fullback.
Sutton Smith. That would be like when they drafted Sutton Smith, right? Because he was that linebacker that could also play. Yeah. So hold on. No, I'm looking this up. I want to know how many snaps he played at
Probably
fullback.
not many, but he actually mentioned it in his interview, his introductory interview with Steelers.com. And I pulled some of the quotes from that when I wrote the article, which y'all didn't read, obviously, as Shannon would say. So
well, I don't see Shannon in the live chat. And, that's my good buddy. I love that guy. I love Shannon.
I love Shannon too.
But he's not in the live chat. So, hey, free game.
Do you know what year that was?
Oh, I don't know.
Probably like 16.
Well, 16 is when he started. I didn't have him there.
It might have been just for like 1 or 2 games. I think he said it was the end of the season and their fullbacks were all injured. They needed someone to run fullback, and so he did. He might not have even had a carry, Dave, so you might not even.
No, I'm looking at snaps played by position.
Well, the live chat is calling for nasty Nate Herbig at fullback.
Oh, yeah. The big dude.
I would. Hey,
big
that would be like when they had Mondo.
Yeah.
He's bigger than Mondo, though.
Backfield. Here we go. Is that off? Hold on. Is that considered offense? Yeah, he had a total of 70 snaps.
70
in 2019.
Wow.
He
That's
had
way
as many
more than
as
I thought.
he had 21 offensive snaps in week 16.
See, they did make a move at fullback. That just made Derek Watt expendable. Put a Landon Roberts back there.
Just think if they had given him number 44 after all.
See, I thought that's where you were going, Dave.
That'd be great.
When you were saying how they gave him the 44, I was like, oh, Dave knows the nugget. I can't say anything about it now. This is ruining my whole shtick. And then, that's perfect. Good job. Yeah. Okay. 70 snaps. I didn't expect it to be that.
I didn't either.
To be honest with you. Okay. All right. Well, let's move on to the next one. I kind of want to skip this guy, but we have to do it because we're going over everyone. Jesse Davis, the dude didn't even play more than a handful of snaps the entire season, and they were all special teams, I believe. Brian, thoughts on him?
So there is a great soundbite opportunity for Dave Schofield. When you go ahead and look at this, go pull up the New Day in WWE, and they like to use this who. And that's what I think of when I think of Jesse Davis. I know exactly who he is, all about him, but he did not play. Yeah, come on. The moves that they're making, and they're going to draft some guys, I don't think there's room for a guy like Jesse Davis.
Dave?
Okay, one thing just to come back to just to get my numbers right with the Landon Roberts. He had 58 regular season snaps at fullback and 12 postseason snaps.
Oh my gosh, the dude has more postseason snaps than Derek Watt.
Yes, he.
All right, there you go.
Jesse Davis, you forget. Jesse Davis signed with the Dolphins.
Did he really though? That was a prank.
He did it. That was a prank out there.
Dolphins fans hate this guy.
And they got people with that. But they showed him actually signing a contract, and it wasn't even 4 p.m. on Wednesday yet. It was obviously old footage, and that they were trying to mess with Dolphins fans. But no, he did not. Trent Scott is gone. So, I mean, if the Steelers want another backup lineman that's a veteran, I don't know that they need Jesse Davis. Jesse Davis should be someone who wouldn't count anything on the salary cap because he should be getting the lowest of the low contract. But there's really no reason to rush and sign him. I mean, that to me, that's a June or July signing if they do that.
Yeah, I agree with you guys, 100%. Okay, let's go to the next offensive player. That would be none other than Miles Boykin. Great special teams player. And if we're going to talk about that with Derek Watt, we got to bring it up with Miles Boykin. Brian, what do you think?
Well, you're losing special teams players. You lost one, and Spillane's a special team player a good bit of the time. You know, I would think a guy like Boykin is one of those guys that you might want to consider bringing back because he does have ability to catch the football if you need him. In fact, I think he is much better than what Darius Hayward-Bay was as a receiver. When you think about that, and DHB was amazing on special teams, Boykin, I think, was actually a find when they brought him in there. So I would definitely bring a guy like that back.
Dave, thoughts on Miles Boykin?
Well, I'm going to ask a question to answer with Miles Boykin. Who's your next player on the list?
My next player on the list
is it another wide receiver?
No, it's Benny Snell Jr.
Oh, well, what about Sims?
I can do that one next if you want.
But no, because the problem is when you've got two guys like that and Gunnar O, between those three guys, you have one realistic spot that you could use as a fifth wide receiver. I would love Miles Boykin, believe it or not, out of all of them. And the reason I say that is because, you still got Anthony Miller, you still got CA3. If they go wide receiver in the draft, not that I want them to go high, but you never know what the Steelers are going to do. I would love that, but that's the thing. You don't want to have all those special teams guys because you can't have. I can't believe that they had Sims and Boykin and Olszewski all there because they were basically just special teams. I mean, made minimal impact on offense. So as much as I would love Boykin, because if I had to pick one between the three, I would say Boykin because even though he's not a returner, I think he has more impact on special teams. Look how bad they were the week him and Spillane were both out. They were terrible on special teams.
Yeah.
So that's why I would love for him to come back. But right now, I see it as the Steelers. The longer it goes and he's not employed elsewhere, the Steelers are getting more savings. So the question is, how long do you want to wait where every day it almost seems like the amount you would offer would go down until you see that someone else is also going to offer something about the same? So I like the wait and see approach, but if it's going to be a cheap deal, bring him back and see if he's the better guy.
All right, Brian, go ahead and talk about Steven Sims. Dave brought him up. We can talk about him now. Go ahead.
With them not protecting him, with not tendering him, I kind of feel like he's not coming back. I really feel that they have a guy that they think is going to do that trick, and it's going to be a guy like Calvin Austin III. So I have a feeling they're going to look at a guy like that. I also have a feeling that they sense that Gunnar O, if it doesn't work out with a guy like Calvin Austin III, that they could go the Gunnar O way. I know it did not go well in week 2 and week 4, but you notice he started getting some opportunities towards the end of the year. Not a lot on the return end, but they started looking at him more in the passing game. and everything. So I just don't think Steven Sims is a guy that they're looking at as a priority to bring back. They're probably going to let him hang out there. They're not going. They didn't want James Pierre to hang out too long, but I think they feel like they could roll the dice on Steven Sims.
I agree with you guys there. I would take Boykin over the two. Let's go with, we have two left. We have Benny Snell football, and then we have Zach Gentry. Let's start with Benny Snell football, Brian. What do you think?
Oh, gosh. What I think they should do and what they're going to do, they keep bringing this guy back. They like him a whole lot more than we do. Now, I will go ahead and say I was wrong, and because that Indianapolis game, he played very well. He did well in that game. I think he's kind of a mainstay for them, that they just know that they can keep bringing back on the cheap, and it doesn't hurt them if they need to. They can bring him in as a camp body and then decide that, hey, he's probably the best guy to keep around for what he does on special teams. They love what he does there. I'm not interested in bringing him back, but obviously I think they are interested. So I would kind of bet that he kind of comes back.
All right, Dave, what do you think?
Yeah, once again, but before I go on, something that was brought up in the live chat about Sims and how much he would cost. That would have been if the Steelers gave him a tender as a restricted free agent. They did not. He's an unrestricted free agent. He does not have to cost that 2.6 whatever million dollars that it would have been. That's exactly what happened with James Pierre. The Steelers didn't tender him, and they got him for half the price when they actually signed him. So that's what the same deal would be with Sims. Now with Benny Snell, tell you what, I love me some Benny Snell football when he's RB3. How much better of an RB3 was he than an RB2? Because you didn't have to call on him. And man, the dude can play some special teams. And you know how the Steelers love, well, if you're going to be a depth guy, you've got to play special teams. If they can get a third running back, let's say Ant Mac is up there and he's going to be a return guy, perhaps, I don't know, then I'm okay with that. But if your third running back isn't playing special teams like Benny Snell's playing special teams, then Benny Snell was your better option there. But it's got to be for once again, all these guys, in my opinion, are basically league minimum guys.
Yeah, I agree. If Benny Snell is still a free agent, bring him in. What do you think about Zach Gentry, Brian?
I really think he's coming back now. Let me go outside a little bit because my free agent crush that I've brought up a whole lot here, I've got to bring him up here. He's not just a free agent. It doesn't matter what team he plays for, plays for the human team. And I've got to let Foster Moreau is the guy that I really wanted to come in here, wanted them to look at if they were going to let go of Zach Gentry. And now with he being diagnosed with a physical with the New Orleans Saints with Hodgkin lymphoma, that is just terrible news. And I pray for Foster Moreau, and I hope we're seeing him in a football uniform soon. I don't care if it's a Steeler uniform as long as it's a football uniform, because the man is healthy and ready to go. I would have loved for them to bring a guy like that in. Now, I don't really see anybody else out there that you would probably desire them to bring in. And Zach has he's got a great relationship with not just Pat Freiermuth, but the entire team. And for where he was when they drafted him, they put a title on him when he was drafted in 2019, and it was Project. And how many of those guys? We've seen Bryan Allen. Remember Bryan Allen, the corner that they got in the 5th round? He was a project. And you see all these guys that are projects. This is the one project they drafted in the 5th round that did pretty well for him after he went through the progressions. It didn't happen right away, but it's the first project that moved along each year. And now he would be a guy that you would definitely bring back in. So I don't know what kind of, I don't know how that blocking tight end is really valued in the first week of free agency. We're towards the end of the second week of free agency. So that could be a possibility that just signals that he's probably coming back, that they're probably going to give him some kind of small raise, but bring him back into the fold.
Dave, thoughts on Zach Gentry?
All right. Well, first of all, yeah, Zach Gentry was not good his first year trying to get acclimated to the NFL. Got injured his second year. So he basically had 2 years with the Steelers and did a nice job for where he was picked and what he was asked to do. The question is, do you want to roll back with the same thing at tight end, or do you want to see if you can make it a little bit different? To me, Zach Gentry's a guy you sign the Sunday after the draft. And the reason I say you sign the Sunday after the draft is, well, chances are it'd be cheap enough that you wouldn't have to worry about teams waiting until players don't count on the compensatory formula. But if something happens where the right tight end is there that the Steelers like in the draft, then you don't have to worry about it. But if it's not something you address, or if there's an undrafted free agent that they could possibly get and they don't get, then you can bring in Zach Gentry. But to me, right now, if you could only keep one of them and you were choosing between Zach Gentry and Connor Hayward, it's Connor Hayward. So that's why there's no rush to bring back Gentry. I don't think other teams are knocking down his door. I would not complain at all for him to come back and fill the role of what the Steelers needed him to do. But Steelers also have some interesting additions at guard that maybe they could play jumbo tight end. I know usually you think of that as being a tackle, but maybe they'll think a little bit outside the box there, since we already said about fullback. But to me, that's Gentry right there. He's another one of those guys that if he doesn't have a job anywhere else, it doesn't hurt to have him come to training camp with the Steelers. But if the Steelers do go out and add another tight end, not in the draft, it's probably going to be like half the free agents that they added already. And it's going to be people that we didn't even really know their name before the Steelers added them. And yet we could fall in love with them after they did. I mean, come on. Did you guys really know the name Nate Herbig before the Steelers signed him? No. So chances are, if the Steelers do add a different tight end other than Zach Gentry, you're probably not going to know who he is.
Very good. All right, so that wraps up our free agent purgatory session with all the players that still remain unsigned. If you're wondering about Trenton Scott, he reportedly signed. I'm not sure about the duration of the contract with the Washington Commanders, so that's why he's not on the list. I didn't list Terrell Edmunds. We talked about him at the beginning of the show. So, all right, let's finish this up with some trivia. You all have trivia? Yeah. Brian?
Dave does.
All right, Dave.
Dave almost didn't, but Dave decided to go with something. If you listen to this morning's Stat Geek, I gave a little update just to, if you're going to be stat geeky and you're going to talk about gains and losses in free agency, you do it by wrapping it into the compensatory formula. So I did that, gave that update. There was no Trent Scott. We still don't have any idea if Malik Reed will qualify. Terrell Edmunds is now another one thrown out there. But as of right now, the Steelers are not looking to get a compensatory draft pick in 2024 based on free agency because they've signed more guys. Remember, it's not about how big the contracts are until you have a net loss. It's about players lost, unrestricted free agents versus unrestricted free agents gained that had enough of a salary to qualify. I'll go ahead and put it out there so people realize it. If Bud Dupree signs with the Steelers, he was a street free agent. He wouldn't count, just like Miles Jack didn't count last year. But I was looking at compensatory stuff and everything else. And the Steelers, right now, the way things are going, they would not have a compensatory pick in 2024. They didn't get one in 2023. Do you guys know the last time it was where the Steelers went 2 seasons without a compensatory draft pick? Or sorry, 2 drafts without a compensatory draft pick. Oh, this air is just fantastic for the podcast, for the audio side.
That's a tough one. I've
07.
06 and 07. They had 3 compensatory picks in 06 and 2 in 07.
All right, so I win. I'm done. I'm out first. Go ahead, Brian.
Okay.
You're up.
So I'm going to go ahead and go with 12 and 13.
12 and 13. In 12, they had 3 picks, and in 13, they had 1 pick.
Well, there you go. Right,
so the last time it wasn't that long ago. It was 18 and 19. They had 3 picks in 17, and then none in 18 and none in 19. And then they came back in 20, where they had because they had Alex Highsmith, and then 21 was Buddy Johnson, and then Last year was Calvin Austin. So it's this coming draft and the following draft where they might not have any. But what's also interesting to note is that the Steelers, what do you think their longest dry streak is of number of seasons without a compensatory pick?
3.
2.
5.
No.
They went from 01 to 05 without having any compensatory picks.
Didn't need them.
Didn't need them.
Nope. There you go.
They weren't cowards players.
It's okay. What's up, Brian?
I actually do have trivia.
All right.
So this is free agency, and we talked about quarterbacks. Who was the first unrestricted free agent in the era of free agency that just happened in the last 30 years to play quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers?
That's so weird when you say 30 years because that was in the 90s, and that doesn't seem like it should be 30 years ago.
Yeah, I know.
Makes me feel old. Wait, you know why? That's because we are old. Because even Jeff can say,
I'm a man. I'm 40.
Oh, God. The sound clip never goes away.
Never goes away. So the first free agent quarterback to play with the Steelers.
Kent Graham. No.
Was it start or just be on the roster?
No, to be on the roster, yeah.
Okay, to be on the roster. So it would have been.
Kent Graham was number 2, by the way, and that was the year 2000.
Tomzak?
It was Mike Tomzak in 1993, the first year of unrestricted free agency.
He joined that early in 93? Wow.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. I got one right.
I think of Tomzak, well, I guess, because I don't think of Tomzak in the Neil O'Donnell era. I think of him in the Cordell Stewart era. That's why.
Well, he
was in both.
He started most of that season in 2016. Excuse me, gosh, 1996.
Thank you. You'll get there eventually.
Yeah.
To date, he's the most successful Ohio State quarterback in the NFL, I think, in the modern era.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which says a lot.
How about that?
Yeah. Okay. Let's do some final thoughts. Dave, go ahead.
Final thoughts. Free agency is not over. It's just really slowed down. The Steelers will still continue to add to this team. Right now, with Terrell Edmunds, when it's officially announced that he goes somewhere else, some people are like, oh, it's a terrible loss. But, I mean, my goodness, how long was the terrible loss of Cam Sutton? Not nearly as bad. And when not long after that, the Steelers didn't wait a long time to take care of it. Therefore, if they weren't signing Edmunds or somebody else, it's because they felt that they had multiple options, perhaps. And hopefully now that maybe those options are getting smaller, we might see something in that regard. I really hope they don't have to go into the draft worrying about it. But you know what? We talk about it now, and it seems like the sky is falling. And next thing you know, next week, the week after, or maybe it's even after the draft, we're going to feel so much better about stuff when it actually comes down. So it's interesting now, but I think the Steelers know what they're doing, and it'll happen in their timing.
All right, Brian, final thoughts.
This felt like a really slow week for the Pittsburgh Steelers because last week was so jam-packed, but the week started with Isaac Seumalo coming in, and there was a lot of things that still happened with promotions and behind the scenes, and it was a good week, another good week for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, we're talking about how this has been a great free agency so far for Omar Khan, and it has. But I want to caution everybody, and if you've listened to me on bad language last week, then you would know where I'm going with this. This does not diminish anything Kevin Colbert has done whatsoever. Because if you notice, towards the end of Kevin Colbert's career as GM of the Pittsburgh Steelers, he started doing things that he never did before and was kind of the opposite direction of the usual Steeler way. But the NFL has changed so much as far as personnel goes in just the last 2 years. In fact, it's so much more different than it was 3 years ago. It's crazy. You're never going to hear about a guy like Tyreek Hill deciding that he wants traded and the next day he gets traded. That's kind of the way things are going in the NFL. We would have never seen Ezekiel Elliott ever be cut. he would go. He might have ended up on another team, a player that caliber, but he would have went on his own recognizance because you know why? Because he was a free agent and they decided not to go in that direction. So the NFL has changed so much that this does not mean that Omar Khan is so much greater of a general manager and a personnel guy than what Kevin Colbert is. It just means that he's able to come in and adapt with the times and actually do very well with the times. And that goes back to the fact that he's probably one of the best GMs in the league right now because he has the mind for money. And that's why the Steelers have been blessed with the great general managers that they've had. There's only about 5 or 6 that I can name over the last 50 years. And I believe that's true if we go ahead and look at it. And we do that with head coaches all the time. Start thinking about personnel guys too, player development guys. Pittsburgh is rich there as well.
Very well said. All right, gentlemen, it's been a good show. We are going to call it a show, and we will be back next Thursday for another Steelers preview podcast. As always, make sure you follow us everywhere you get Steel Curtain Network stuff, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You see our Twitter feeds rolling on the bottom of the screen. Give us a follow. We appreciate it. Trying to boost up that Steel Curtain Network Facebook page. So go ahead and give us a follow there. We do appreciate that as well. And we'll be back next Thursday. Dave, why don't you send us out?
Hey.
See you next week.
Everybody else gets a little tight.